President Trump's tumultuous week is coming to a close, but as some may be getting ready to enjoy the weekend, the president is gearing up for his first foreign trip in office. And if that wasn't enough to prepare for, the White House also has to deal with the fallout of this week's events and magazine covers like this one. Time White House correspondent and CBSN political contributor Zeke Miller is in our Washington bureau. So Zeke, the president has been calling actions and reactions from the past few days a witch hunt. How is the White House operating now that a special counsel has been appointed to lead the Trump-Russia probe?
No, that's a really interesting question because not much has changed inside the White House. We saw, last night that statement from the president himself, sort of very subdued, followed up by the tweets later. They still seem to be playing off the same old playbook of punch and counterpunch, and essentially being very reactive to the news. They were essentially trying to get through the week into the foreign trip, and then there were all sorts of plans, potentials for some sort of rejiggering the administration, trying to create using the foreign trip as a reset point for the administration. But that's all that's all predicated on the foreign trip being successful. If it's not successful, that will just continue this week's bad news overseas and then coming back at home in a week and a half.
Yeah, I mean, so he's traveling to Saudi Arabia on Friday as part of his first trip abroad while in office. Could the revelations of the past few days affect the trip?
Absolutely. I mean, besides the fact that the president's going to get questions about this from the U.S. and the Foreign Press Corps, maybe some of his other world leaders all throughout the trip. Every time he meets with a foreign leader, there's generally what we call a pool spray. Reporters and photographers are brought in, and they'll generally ask questions, and the president may or may not answer them. So that's number one. Number two, it means he's out of the country, and there could be revelations at home. These stories are not over yet. The appointment of a special counsel doesn't mean that there won't be more leaks and more revelations that we'll see. So he might have to respond to those things abroad, where he might not be sort of ready to do that. He has his mind on foreign policy affairs as well. And also, this is a very challenging trip. You're talking about going to Saudi Arabia, Israel, the Vatican, let alone meeting with the G7 and NATO allies. There's a lot that can go wrong here, and anything that does go wrong will build into the narrative of, the White House just can't get anything going right now. They can't catch a break. The hits keep coming. And that's certainly what this past week and a week and a half has been here. If this next week goes into that, then becomes a month of problems, and then this administration starts looking for a really big shakeup.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be so fascinating to watch how he interacts with all of these various world leaders. Meantime, former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman is a top choice for the president to lead the FBI. Zeke, why would the White House pick him over someone with criminal justice experience?
Joe Lieberman was obviously the Democratic vice presidential nominee in 2000, but had a big, he'd always been sort of the centrist Democrat independent throughout his career. But then in 2008 was on the short list for John McCain as his running mate, gave that convention speech at the Republican National Convention and in support of Sarah Palin at the time. So he's been on, he's as politically independent as they come now. Democrats don't like him. That's the thing. A lot of Republicans are saying this might be a good idea to get Democrats on board. That's not going to work. He's reviled by the Democratic base, particularly sort of the ascendant progressive wing of the Democratic Party. They rejected him in 2006 in Connecticut. The White House seems to be thinking that this will be a PR win, picking some sort of senior statesman to do this. It's not clear that strategy is going to pan out for them, though.
What does that tell us about the White House's read on the political landscape?
Either they're looking to provoke a fight, which is one thing, or they're completely blind to the political realities of the day. We saw that last week after the firing of Director Comey, and a little bit from the president himself when he said today, "I thought this was going to be a bipartisan decision." It would be. He thought he was going to get praise from both sides of the aisle by firing former FBI Director James Comey, and of course that's not at all what happened. Even members of his own party were up in arms. So if that's the case, they think that picking Joe Lieberman is a political win for them. Will get Democrats on board. That means they're completely detached from the political realities on the ground, and that means that their problems, sort of get the ability to get the White House back on track. Their pulse is not on Congress, not on Democrats, or even their own conference and their own party. They have a lot more work to do. Yeah.
Well, finally, I want to talk about health care. Bloomberg is reporting that House Speaker Paul Ryan still hasn't sent the new health care bill to the Senate because the CBO score hasn't come out, the Congressional Budget Office. I mean, are these difficulties within the White House basically putting the brakes on the administration's agenda?